Today we have Michael Quinn, who is one of 5 candidates for 2 spots on a 3-year term on the Pembroke School Committee. Welcome.
Thank you for having me here today, Julie. I'm excited to do this interview.
That was a mouthful. Okay, Pembroke School Committee. First question, We're going to dig right in.
Oh, all right.
How do you determine your budget priorities given the mandates that you have no control over and the state funding which has not been finalized? So start with that part.
Yeah, we go through a long process, starting in probably the fall of the previous year. We have the principals of each school put together, decide their wants and needs that they need for each school. Then they tier them into Tier 1 needs, which is something that they absolutely need this year. Tiers 2 and 3, which is stuff that they could use, they'd like to have if we have it in the budget.
Yep.
We do the same with all the department heads. All the various department heads do the same.
Yep.
So we have our, our arts and visual medium, our sports, our sports director, athletic director, all of them, special ed. They all do the same thing. They get their figure out their wants and needs as Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3.
Yep.
And we go through and we discuss. They give a presentation to us. Each of them presents to us early from probably January up through March.
Okay.
They present to us, and then the subcommittee, the finance subcommittee, goes through and discusses it, and then makes recommendations to us.
To you, and then you guys will have the final say.
And then we have final vote.
Okay. Okay. So let me ask you something else. Every single department head in every school creates their own kind of proposal for you. Where do you prioritize? Let's say all the proposals are fabulous. They're all wonderful. Everyone's asking for everything that they should get approved. How do you prioritize what you will actually say, yes, I can vote for that?
It's got to be, starting out, it's got to be a need, an absolute need. We get those, we have all the needs done first. And then it's a matter of, having discussions, working with the superintendent. Superintendent's very good at knowing what is very important to them. And we discuss during the meetings, and we figure out really what is the actual priorities, what needs to be, what needs to be done, what's more important than others. And like I said, it's also a lot of it is worked out in subcommittee as well. And then we vote on what is the most efficient budget that we can and that we can put together.
Agree upon.
Right.
Okay. Now, what do you do with the fact that you don't know yet what you're going to get from the state per pupil?
We usually have.
How do you do a budget when you don't know the number?
It makes it a little bit more difficult. I will say that. We do have a pretty good idea by that time of what we'll be getting. We won't have exact numbers, but there'll be a ballpark.
Range? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're always able to, if our budget comes up, if the dollar comes up a little bit short, we're always able to kind of move things around and get that, and make it work out in the end.
Okay.
There's always we can always find a way to, like I said, move things around.
Okay.
Make it work out.
Okay. What about the decrease in school enrollment? Now, if you have a constituent that comes up to you and says, why is the budget going up and yet we have less and less kids in the school? How do you answer that question?
There's a few answers to that. Is that one is obviously inflation. Everybody's talked about that, especially since COVID. We saw a lot of inflation from 2020 to really 2022, but we're still seeing higher than average inflation every year. And education inflation has actually been higher than COI inflation. So that's added to it. That's a big thing. 2 is we're providing more services now to the kids. And part of the reason is COVID. Part of the reason is that we're finding now the kids need a lot more help. We're finding that there is, they're in the school all day. That's where they spend most of their day.
Right.
And we need to make it as good an experience for all the kids as we possibly can. So we do have social workers at the schools. We do have all of those types of services available to the kids in the school now. And I would say third, on top of that, is and this may be a result of COVID, it may not be, but there's an increase in IEPs. There's been
Yeah, we'll have a
an
separate,
increase
we'll talk
in,
about special ed in a
Okay.
separate question, because that's a whole nother topic, obviously.
yeah.
Okay. All right, let's go on to the question number 2. The discussion of vocational schooling is not new to Pembroke. The Pathways program is a start, but certainly not the total solution.
Right.
What planning and initiatives do you think are needed now, and why?
Well, so I am on the exploratory committee
Yeah.
for VOTEC. I think we need to really be focusing on South Shore VOTEC. We can do VOTEC. We could patch something together. It's not going to be that great, and we're going to spend a lot of money if we do it ourselves. I think if we buy into South Shore VOTEC, or now it's South Shore Technical,
Yep.
we're getting a high-quality program. They're renovating their building. We basically have a new state-of-the-art building with 14, I believe it's 14 programs, it might be a little bit more than that, available to the kids that we can take advantage of. We're part of that district.
Now, do you have to buy into that? Do you have to help with the cost of the expansion of VOTEC?
Yes.
Okay, so that's one cost separate from what it would cost to actually send the
kids
Pembroke
over.
students
Yeah.
there. So talk about those 2 different avenues of funding.
Yep. So we do have to buy in. We would have to pay for part of the new build. Our percentage of that will be determined. It's going to be ballpark of maybe 9, 10, 11% or so of
The
their
total cost?
Yes,
Okay.
because we would be the 10th we would be the 10th town to join the district. So
Okay.
we'll split it up. It's going to be apportioned out based on the number of students that
Yep.
each town sends.
Yep, makes sense.
They're estimating what we'd send based on the number of students we have and the demand for VOTEC. So, like I said, it'll be somewhere in the 9, 10, 11,
And
12% range of the cost.
How soon would you have to pay that percentage?
That would be coming out over the course of years. They would be,
Okay.
there's a little bit of a formula that they've worked out to it. So year 1, if we get in, say we send 20 kids to the school, we're going to pay the percentage based on the number of students that we have, and
So
then they'll keep going.
it's not X amount of $1 million right off the bat has to go
No.
towards this building. Okay.
No, they're going to have us pay it over the number of years. I think don't quote me on this. I believe it was over the course of about 7 years
Okay.
or so.
So that's if the town
If we get
decides
voted in, yes.
and you get voted in, do the other towns that are already there have to say, yes, Pembroke students, we
Yes.
will allow you to come in?
Yeah, so they're going to be starting their meetings, I believe, in next January to decide if they want us to come in. We would need to get 6 out of the 9 towns to vote us in.
Okay.
And then, we could, and then we would bring it to town meeting.
Right.
So what will happen is we'll be discussing this in the fall. In a perfect world, I'm talking to the other school committee members, and we're able to, come to a consensus on bringing it to the town. I think there's a little bit of a misconception about us being able to just say, oh, let's have the town vote for it.
Right.
It doesn't work like
that way.
No,
Okay.
if we vote to bring it to town meeting, that
Yep.
means that we've given it our rubber stamp of approval.
Okay.
We've done our due diligence.
Yep.
We support it.
And the school has supported you coming into there.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
So before it goes
Well,
to town meeting, you have to be approved by
by
Social
them, yes.
VOTEC,
But
right?
what I would hope to do, and what I think we would hope to do, is have our meetings in the school committee in the fall.
Yeah.
Have our school committee approve it so that when the other towns start meeting in January, that they can see how serious we are.
Okay.
And they'll vote
That you're ready
for
to
it.
go. Okay.
And then we can bring it to town meeting.
Okay. So if all that works and that all happens, and students from Pembroke are allowed to go to South Shore VOTEC or whatever it's called now, when would that start?
That would start in fall of 26.
Fall of 2026?
Yeah.
And do you have any estimation of how many students would want to apply for that program? And is it a 4-year program?
It would be a 4-year program. They would be accepted right in freshman year.
Okay.
It's an estimate right now.
What's the estimate?
I would guess initially probably roughly 20, 25 students in
Okay.
the first year.
Okay.
Could be more than that. But I could see us having, over the course of 4 years, maybe we start 20, 25, we get upwards of like
Increase.
40 a
Yeah,
year or so
right,
once kids
right.
realize that the option is
Yep.
there.
And you have to pay for their actual schooling also.
Right,
So you have to
yes.
pay almost like the tuition.
Right.
And then you also would have to pay for transportation.
Yes, those
Okay.
are part of the
So those are
unfunded mandates
yeah.
from
So
the
that's
state. Yes.
that's a biggie. And
Right.
do we know that per pupil number right now, or is that not even known?
The tuition is roughly about 19,000, maybe just under 20 per student.
Okay.
The transportation, I don't have numbers on that just yet.
Okay.
But we are sending kids to Aggie, Norfolk Agricultural in
Which is
Walpole.
way far away. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would
Okay.
say the transportation cost would be a lot less than
Okay.
what that is.
Okay. So definitely more to come on this.
Yes.
This whole subject.
There'll be more information coming
Okay.
out, definitely.
Okay. So let's talk about special education.
Okay.
So what is your philosophy on special ed? And do you believe that the uptick in students requiring additional services is an anomaly or actually the future of K through 12 in Pembroke schools?
Yeah, that is a really good question. And we kind of had a short discussion on this at one of our couple meetings ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's been a rise in English language
language, yeah.
English
Yeah.
language
Learners, yeah.
So I'm not an English teacher.
Okay.
There's been a rise in that. I don't know if that's going to continue. I would imagine it probably would.
Now, those are kids that don't speak English as their first language?
Right.
Okay, so
Yes.
we need to support them by teaching them English.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
They live in our town. They're part of the public school system. They need to have the tools to be able to succeed.
Is this
in
a
the town.
new population within the town?
It's been rising. I don't know if it would be a new population, but it's been rising over the years. I want to say that we had a stat in one of our meetings about 2 months ago. A number of English language learners, I was able to say it that time, went from about 60 to 79 over the course of
And this
4
is
years.
K through 12?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yep.
All right, so that's one group of people that need the
In the
English
special
language.
ed, yep.
What else?
And then as far as special ed students, we're seeing, obviously an increase in IEPs.
Which is an individual educational plan.
Yes.
And that's based on a learning deficit or an
Yeah,
identified
set-
learning issue
Right.
that you want to give the student a little bit more time
Some
with
more-
or support
exactly.
with. Okay.
Yep. And
okay.
that's all set by the state, I believe.
Okay.
And we've seen a rise in that, and it's to be determined, I think, if that's an after effect of shutting things down for COVID,
Mm-hmm.
or if that's going to be the new thing. I think it's somewhere in the middle. I
Mm-hmm.
think now we're able to identify issues better than we had been, and more willing to deal with them
Mm-hmm.
than we were before. So. But I do also think that some of it is a byproduct of COVID. So,
Yeah. Right.
It's hard to say exactly.
But the cost of special education in Pembroke has increased dramatically.
Yeah, yeah.
So to those residents out there or voters out there that say, look, we kind of have to take care of the majority of the students.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of the students don't need special education, and yet an awful lot of the budget is going towards them. What do you say to that mindset?
We're required to give them the tools that they need. We're required to educate special ed students as well. I mean, that's not a choice. That's
by
a
law.
mandate. Yes.
Right, by law. Okay.
Yep.
And it's an unfunded mandate.
Exactly. Yeah. And unfunded mandates this year roughly are going to cost us around $5.5 million. It's roughly just under 20% of our total budget. That's just not special ed. That's just unfunded mandates.
Right.
I mean, all the various
in
mandates.
general, right.
Yep.
Is there any talk about going to the state and saying you need to start funding these unfunded mandates that you're making us do?
We've talked about it at meetings. It's something that we talk about here and there, but we haven't really organized. I know that there have been some representatives that have talked about it in our meetings.
Yeah.
What we'd hope to do is, and what we really should do is to start concentrating on working with them more to kind of to bring it up more when they're in Boston, especially in the towns, because the way the Chapter 70 funding goes.
Which is what you get per pupil, correct?
Yeah, Chapter 70 funding is what the state is giving us.
Mm-hmm.
And our Chapter 70 funding, being in Pembroke, has just not been.
It's historically been low.
Yeah, it's not keeping up with
Yeah.
the cost of education.
Does chapter funding increase if you have more and more students that are qualified for special education programs?
There is a Student Opportunities Act. I think that was more of low-income type students,
Yeah.
though. We do get some money based on special ed students. We get a certain dollar amount, but we have to pay everything that's above that dollar
that.
amount. Yeah, and that's the unfunded
Yeah.
part of it.
Okay. So you think that this whole idea, the whole special education process is here to stay, and you're just going to try to refine it as best you can?
What I would say is, I think it would be the best thing is if we could get some of these mandates, these unfunded mandates or underfunded mandates, funded. You know, we have to work together, and I think what it'll take us is really maybe talking to other school committees, banding together in various towns, having our representatives, maybe our state senator in our district, really advocate for us. The small towns, especially on the South Shore, are taking a hit now because the Chapter 70 funding isn't there, because we're not increasing the student population
Right.
enough that that the Chapter 70 funding is really helping us. So the towns are spending more
Yeah.
on the school budget than they used to, compared to the state.
Right. And the towns are spending more in the school budget than they used to with less students.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you can understand the people that don't have kids in the schools.
Right.
For all of our towns are like, what's up with this?
Yeah, I mean, the question we get a lot is the number of students has decreased.
Yeah.
Why isn't the budget decreasing
Right.
as well? And I mean, the answer to that is, we have actually over the years adjusted our personnel to that. We have adjusted the programs that we offer, but the costs keep rising.
Right.
Like I said, we did have a massive bout of inflation over a few years. There are more children that need more services than they had before. The cost of transportation
Yep.
has risen dramatically. So it's not just a simple question of, there's, X amount less students, the budget should drop.
Right.
It doesn't, it's
Doesn't
not
work that way.
happening. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So more to come on special ed, I'm sure.
Yes.
Okay, here's the fourth question. There are often two very different sides to a subject matter, and that might come before the school committee. An example, in January, a public meeting was held in regards to political and social advocacy. And it was a very long, interesting meeting to watch. It was over 3 hours long. Can you kind of give a summation of what that meeting was about and how you feel the outcome was?
Yeah. So that meeting was about a proposal to really take pride flags out of classrooms, move them into common areas, with the idea that it wanted to make the classroom more politically neutral.
Was it just pride flags or was it any flags?
Well,
This is what seems to be a real.
It's the
People
this
don't-
is what people don't. We already have rules in effect keeping the class neutral, and those rules include banning political flags. So there's
Okay.
no Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter. There's no Ukrainian flags. I don't think any of that stuff, unless it pertains to the subject matter that's being taught. With this, I don't believe that the pride flag falls under the political banner, so it wasn't included in that rule, in that policy. So in that, really, in reality, what this proposal was about was moving, and I read this, word for word on something else that said that we're looking to move the flags out of the class and into. I believe it was into the hallways or into
So
the common
not
areas.
out of the schools completely, just move them into a more neutral area that wasn't part of the learning experience.
Right, yes.
Okay. So what ended up happening in that meeting?
What ended up happening is we ended up voting it down. We
Voted-
actually
what-
voted 4-0.
What was the proposal that you were voting on?
There was a proposal that it was a longer proposal.
Yep.
And there was a lot more detail to it. There was like 5 main points, and I'm trying to remember them all together. I remember that there was one point that said that student groups could use the pride flag, but they had to sign it out, and we'd keep a log. We'd have to approve it, keep a log. There was another part of it that said that only teachers could only wear pins or what have you of groups that they identify with. So, and there was 3 other parts, and I can't remember what they were now at this point. But looking at that, I mean, right there, those were just 2 parts to it that I just couldn't agree to, for one. And I think it was really meant to be a framework to talk about it, but it was not something that, the rest of us were all willing to move along with.
Now, does it have to do with teachers or students, what they have on their T-shirts, or what pins they have on their backpacks? I mean, how far does
the students?
What is the idea behind this? Is it if you're in the classroom, really the only flag is the American flag? Is that?
It's funny because that's not what came up in the meeting.
Okay.
In the examples for the meeting, and I believe that the policy that was, or I'd call it a framework that was proposed, was not supposed to affect the students at all. The students could still do what they want. They could still have pins on their bags or what have you. It was really in regards to the teachers. As far as, sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
That's okay. It was more, the question was the students, it's almost like the First Amendment rights, I can wear a T-shirt that says something I believe in, and I can show up in class. And
yeah, so the students could do what they wanted. The teachers would not have been allowed to unless they identified with that group, which I think was the most difficult part of that proposal or framework, because then you're looking at if teachers wanted to wear a rainbow pin or what have you, they basically have to out themselves if people don't know what their
so they couldn't wear
is.
one just to be in concert with maybe some students.
Right. That's them. According to
that was the point of it. Do you think this issue has been resolved?
We voted it down, and as far as I'm concerned, that's it. We're not bringing it up again. The town came out. They didn't want it to go through. We voted 4-0 to put it down. So as far as I'm concerned, it's been voted on. And
so the proposal to move any kind of flags or whatever they were from the classroom to a neutral space is the thing that you voted down.
Yeah.
So whatever is currently the policy is what's going to continue.
Yeah, and we're actually refining the policy a little bit to make it clearer for parents, because I think there was an issue. So where I stood on this is, if you think that the teachers are not teaching or are teaching with a bias, moving the flag out of the classroom doesn't resolve that. I don't believe. I think I think it's a matter of finding parents or students that are willing to speak up about it and have specific instances. Didn't have much of that. There was a couple things, they were resolved, which to me shows that the policy has been working. So what we're looking to do now is we're just kind of refining the policy. We're taking a couple different policies that we already had, combining them into one, and then putting in the policy for how to escalate a complaint. So you start out by going to the principal. If you don't get that resolved, you go to the superintendent. And
so a student could make a complaint, a teacher can make a
complaint,
or
a parent,
but a teacher can't. Teachers aren't allowed to weigh in on this, really?
I mean, that's a very good question, actually. We didn't really talk about that. We really only talked about students
or
parents.
It's the teachers that are doing the teaching, and I'm sure they're the ones that's hearing most of this.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
Yeah. Okay.
I would say that our policy right now is really a handbook for the students or the parents to complain if they feel that.
Okay.
But that's a good point that you brought up.
Okay. All right. We're going to let you now take about two minutes to talk to the constituents out there and tell them why they should vote for you.
To reiterate, I'm Mike Quinn. I'm running for re-election to the school committee. I was appointed to school committee last year, in January of 23. Over the course of the past almost a year and a half, I've gained a lot of experience. It's become a lot clearer to me what the role of school committee is, how hard it can be to make tough decisions, and how important it is to have someone who can take emotion out of the equation and just vote for the right thing for the students every time. It does take, as anyone has told me, it takes about a year or so to learn this job. So I've gained valuable experience in the last year. I also believe that I have the financial experience needed to help us navigate through the complicated budget constraints that we're going to be seeing over the next couple of years. And I have the passion about VOTEC education to move that forward and work to move that forward and to get it passed. I really hope that you will, and I think I've also proven through my votes that I'm an independent thinker, that I'm able to analyze the data that I see in front of me and vote accordingly. Every time I voted, I've made sure that I vote for the health of the school system and for the advantage to the town, as well as what's best for the kids every single time. I hope you'll vote for me on May 18th, and I want to thank you for having me here today, Julie.
Well, thank you very much, and we wish you best of luck in your campaign and during this election season. And please do make your voices heard by voting on or before May 18th in the Pembroke town elections. Thank you, and good day.